You're listening to the Bob and Bo Show. Here are your hosts, Ty Bob, Ty Bo, and Sean. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am Ty Bob, joined by Ty Bo and Sean. We are coming back after a Week 7 victory. It's a big one. Over our
the get right.
It was the get right game. Over our former opponents in the Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers. We all
Seems
three
like
come
we
out.
got right.
Seems like we got right. Seemed like Frank Clark got right until he got suspended. We'll talk about that here shortly. But the Kansas City Chiefs did win 44-23 in Levi's Stadium. A little bit of news. I did just mention it. Per Adam Schefter, Chiefs defensive end Frank Clark was suspended 2 games for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. I thought that they had actually already addressed this and were not going to fine him. Andy Reid was on 610 earlier this season where they had asked him about Frank Clark being suspended. They said that they were not expecting anything, had not heard anything from the NFL, so they were going to continue or proceed as normal. It turns out that he's going to end up missing our next 2 games, which does not include the bye week, but that will be coming back to get us against the Titans when we come back from the bye week. And who's after the bye week? The Jaguars. So he'll miss those 2 games. He'll be back just in time to face the Chargers, the Rams, and Bengals all in a row.
At least the next 2 games are at home, though.
I still think it's unfortunate timing with how well he just played. Take some time, get, rest up, come back from that suspension ready to be who you were in that last game against the 49ers, because that we love to see that type of production out of Frank Clark. We just know it's not going to come every game. So hopefully he can give us some of what we need down the stretch.
Well, I'll tell you, it was a fantastic game. In the words of a Chelsea fan like myself, wonderful meal. And with that being said, I believe Tybo has a top 5 for us.
Speaking of wonderful meals, great tie-in there, Ty Bob. Well, I'm giving you Tybo's top 5 dishes that I like to cook. The dishes that I think are my best. Okay. I've done a top 5 restaurants on the show before. We know I love food. I won't say I like making food more than I like going out, because if someone else is going to cook me food and I don't have to work for it, that's great. I get sweaty as fuck in the kitchen. So,
you get sweaty as fuck anywhere.
Shut up. But I just, when I do make food, I also have this, like, it's an insecurity. It's a validation thing. Like, I have to know how you feel about my food, like good or bad. Like, I want tips if it's bad, and I just want the validation if it's good. But I will stare at you as you eat my food until you tell me what you think about it.
I don't think I've ever told Tybo he's made a bad meal, and he's made me multiple.
Because I'm staring at him with pressure.
It's a little freaky.
But my honorable mention on this list is my steak. Steak doesn't make the top 5 because it's kind of boring. Because, like, once you learn how to cook a steak, you should be able to recreate that every single time. And a lot of people could cook a good steak. I'm still learning. I'm just now kind of figuring out, like, how to get it where I like it, which is medium rare. I overcooked many steaks in the past. I'm only 27, but, like, better than my dad, though, because sorry, he does listen to the podcast, so sorry, Dad, but it's well known that the family, is kind of tired of the way he cooks steaks. But I digress. Sorry, Pat. My top 5. Number 5 is a smothered chop. If you can smother a pork chop so many different ways, I got 2 that I'm really, really good at. Mushroom style, which I make a mushroom gravy, throw a bunch of mushrooms and other stuff that tastes good with mushrooms on top of the pork chop. You can do breadcrumbs with this if you want to, but then that gets soggy with the gravy. But then the other smothered pork chop is like a Parmesan encrusted, so it's almost like Italian, I guess. So Parmesan, Italian herbs, breadcrumbs, that good stuff, cooked till golden brown. But yeah, smothered pork chop's actually pretty easy, but you can fancy up a pork chop with the type of stuff you put over top of it, and my wife loves it. And I think she actually did the first smothered pork chop in my house. But anyways, number 4, I got breaded chicken sliders. Sounds very boring. Sounds very mundane. But my wife can also attest to this. Breading, frying stuff, I knock it out of the park with the seasoning in the actual breading and the coating. So chicken slider is phenomenal that I make for these. But also where I go over the top here is the sauces. So I don't just get a bottle of buffalo sauce and dump it over top. Like I'll make an aioli. I'll make, you know, it's another aioli, but it's a balsamic aioli. Like my sauce game is high up there. Okay, I make a lot of sauces. Love making sauces, but that's what sets my burgers apart. Mac and cheese. Again, sounds boring, but I finally brought some mac and cheese to family Thanksgiving this last Thanksgiving, and they're like, we need it back. My sister's husband actually like wanted all the leftovers for himself. I was so excited. I didn't even care that I didn't get more mac and cheese after the meal. I was like, take it. I feel fantastic that you love it this much. But it's now going to become a staple at family Thanksgiving. But it's not just like a regular mac and cheese. It's a baked mac and cheese. It's got a ranch breading encrusted over top. So good. So good. And I mean, it's as simple as mixing a ranch packet with some breadcrumbs and putting it over top. But it's so good. And the mac and cheese is far from basic because I start off, I make a cheese sauce out of a roux, which is commonly like a soup base. But it's like flour and butter. And you can get your seasonings and your other cheeses in there. And I'm usually just working with what I got. But if I'm going to buy the cheeses for the mac and cheese, you got to have Gruyere because it melts really well. Got to have 1 or 2 types of cheddar. A lot of times I go with smoked stuff, so smoked Gouda, smoked cheddar, stuff that goes great together. My mac and cheese is fire, and I've done it more than a couple times now. I even had one of Zoe's friends request my mac and cheese.
What's the minimum amount of cheeses you put in your mac and cheese? Minimum.
I mean, minimum is 3, shooting for at least 5.
Okay.
I like to have a 5 cheese mac.
I like that.
Yeah. Number 2. This one's kind of seemed like I'm cheating. It's also more based on my sauces, but anything Mexican. So, like a burrito bowl. We often make homemade burrito bowls, like kind of mimicking Chipotle, but like tacos, anything Mexican I make, I'll throw a cilantro lime aioli on there. I'll go out and get some man, that's a fine. I didn't pronounce that right. Poblanos. You blend those up with a bunch of other stuff in there. You make a really, really good sauce. A roasted red pepper sauce. It goes fantastic with certain Mexican meals. Like I said, my sauce game is on another level, and that's why, anything Mexican that you want me to make, it's number 2. Okay, number 1 be my number 1. It's hard, but it's fun to cook. Takes you at least 5, 6, maybe even 7 hours. But I make traditional Japanese ramen. And my best friend has had it, who is, an avid Japanese food lover. I make good ramen. And I put my own little twist on it. So a tonkatsu broth is pork neck bones.
Interesting.
A beef knuckle is a soup bone. You make all types of beef broth with it. I'll do it's prepare it the same way you would a regular tonkatsu broth. You just have a beef knuckle in there with it, so gives it a slightly. I forget the other sauce or it's not a sauce. It's like another broth that I make that's mostly soy sauce. You throw some sake and some other stuff in there. It makes a good salty base for your ramen. But I found online. I like it. I'm good at it. Everybody that I make it for loves it.
He's gonna make it for us sometime soon.
Yeah, it's highly requested, so I got to get these boys in on it too. I will say, one time I did forget to scoop the nasty stuff off the top like you're supposed to out of a ramen broth, and it did give you diarrhea immediately after you ate it. Was so good. So good. But if you don't get all the fat and all like the nasty stuff off, like when your broth is simmering, you have this little like strainer thing that you skim stuff off the top. If you don't do that, ramen's already like super fatty. So if you leave all that stuff in there, it can like run right through you. But if I do it right, you don't get diarrhea and it's still fantastic. So ramen's my number one. And I mean, I don't think anything's going to dethrone that.
Let's just hope whenever you cook it for us that you get all that stuff off there.
Right. Yeah, Tybo likes to cook all the time and never brings it to us. I have him all the time over all the time for smoked meat.
Same here, man. Same here.
Guy. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Next time you invite me over, I will bring a handcrafted dish for you. Okay.
What a guy!
Really nice china.
Well, folks, as you heard in Tybo's top 5, he talked about a fine that we are implementing today. Now, these fines will go towards the winner of Pick'em for this year. We've preliminarily talked about doing a survivor pool with fans of the show this next year. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. We'll see how that goes. But we do need to talk about this fine system really quickly that Tybo had mentioned. There are going to be fines for us individually. There are going to be fines for us as a whole show. So to start off, we have our $1 fines, and this is going to be for the whole show. So anytime we mispronounce a name, we call out somebody incorrectly for incorrect stats or mispronunciations, anything like that. The person who's doing the calling out that is incorrect will be fined $1. If you cough into the mic without having your mic muted, you will be fined $1. All of those again go into the pot. They'll go towards the winner of Pick'em. Potentially, you're muted. It's not on the fine list, nope, but it should be.
We'll add that. But
he's in rough already.
On not muting yourself, doesn't have to be just a cough, like a burp, a sneeze, anything that's going to disrupt me.
We all have. We all have. Usually, I'm assuming all of our phones on vibrate, but if your phone goes off, that would be one of those things that goes in there too. Now we do have a few individuals, and we'll be adding on to these as we go along, but we do have individual fines for each person. It's going to be 50 cents because these are things that we tend to do very often. So it would not be beneficial to any of us for it to be $1 or more. Tybo is going to start out with his long pauses that he tends to take. Sean has his quarterback speak. I'm sure you have all heard it. It's when he says a whole lot of words without meaning or having any meaning in the things that he says. We're also going to hit him with
restating stuff that's already been said.
We're also going to hit him with his muffled mic. If you watch on YouTube, you see him flip his mic up and down a lot. Yep, it just sounds like the muffle in your ear right there. That's a good example. And then for myself, we've called it the Question Master. I am often asking questions 2 or 3 in a row and asking somebody to answer all of those questions and keep in mind what I've asked. As well, I use the same word multiple times throughout segments. So anytime that I use like if you look at last Chief show with Tybo, I think I use the word seemingly at least 6 times. So if I start to use a word too often, I get hit with it every time then and after as I continue.
His Nickelback grievance with me, he said the word grievance like 5 times.
Grievance.
It is now a running joke for the show, which is great. So those are our fines. They'll have been put up so that you can see them as well. If you've got any fine contributions, make sure to hit us up. Facebook comments, YouTube comments. Hit us on Twitter.
Y'all should be fined for this.
And as well, like if you catch something that we don't, we're going to be calling it out live in the middle of the show. So if you catch something that we did not, make sure you call us out on there too, so we can add properly to the fine bucket, as we'll call it. And Sean will be our keeper for notations for the fines.
So we'll see how well that goes.
I got one for me that I'll bring up later. I don't want to talk about it live right now.
Yeah, we can do that. So that is our fine system. That will continue on with the show. As I said, winners, the money will go to the winner for Pick'em, and potentially maybe to you guys if we tend to do some sort of competition with the show through the following seasons. With that, I'm going to turn this over to Sean.
Yeah, let's get into a little bit of Chiefs talk here, why don't we? First off, here was an interesting stat that I saw going into this game that I guess you guys probably talked about, but I may have just missed. Niners were the top 3 defense, averaging 14.8 points per game.
Number 1 defense.
Number 1 defense, okay. Averaging 14.8 points per game. Looked at it today, that averages up to 19 points per game. They had
I'm
only given
surprised
up
I
20
didn't jump
points.
further.
Yeah, but they had only given up 20 points one time this year. That was to the Falcons last week. We put up double 20 on them, 44, 22. What does that say about our offense right now?
It's just astounding when it struggles because we know we can put up 44 points on the best, on like continuously number 1 defense. Like
it's good, man. It's one of the things I saw that was pretty neat. Came from at Ghost Off at White on Twitter. He said our statistical paces for this season. Mahomes is on track for over 5,000 yards, 49 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Kelsey's on track for 1,300 yards, over 100 catches, 17 touchdowns. MVS just shy of 1,000. Juju's on pace for 1,200, 5 tutties. Clyde is on pace for 700 yards. Chris Jones is on pace for 12 sacks.
At about 400 receiving for Clyde, or between 300 and 400, I thought.
Exactly. And 19 touchdowns for him. CJ with 12 sacks, and Nick Bolton's on pace to break the record for, I believe, total tackles, which if I remember correctly, is held by Ray Lewis. He's on track for about 167, 170. So like the pace that goes a little bit into the defense, but if we're just talking strictly offense, not missing a beat, man. Like it doesn't matter. Lose Tyreek, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, actually I saw another stat today. We have more plays of over 15 plus yards this year than we did last year.
I believe it's 23 to
14 or so.
Yeah, something around there. Like we're already breaking everything that we've done last year so far. Like who needs Tyreek, man? What are we doing out here? The chemistry hadn't even been set. Like if you go back and take these 2 weeks out for Juju, and he was okay numbers wise, right? We know he's out there, he's creating space for Travis and some of these other guys. But these last 2 weeks, like he's putting it all together. Pat is getting in a rhythm with him and with Travis, and Clyde is getting in there. And now look at McColl 2 weeks in a row also. I don't think that's just a coincidence that McColl is starting to come together for 2 games in a row, which we've never seen, at the same time that Juju is starting to get his chemistry rocking with Pat. Like, I don't think that's a coincidence at all.
Yeah, more production out of Juju probably early on, but it just took a while to get there. What are we in 7? This is week 6, 7?
Yeah, 7.
Like it took a little bit of time to get there. So we knew what we were capable of even without Tyreek Hill, and I think we weren't necessarily one dimensional with Tyreek Hill in the offense, but it's like we were only moving the ball a certain amount of ways, and the defense could key in on the long plays. We're more than multidimensional now. There's so many weapons, there's so many different types of threats that I'm not surprised that we have more plus 20-yard plays than last year because Pat mentioned it before the season starts. The defense doesn't know where it's coming from.
Yeah. Well, this is also amazing to see because Juju came out and said that they brought the chemistry from playing Warzone together on Friday night. Him, Travis, Patrick, and MVS. And that clearly showed because this was the first game, and I forgot what it said, sent on Snapchat earlier. How many years that we had two Chiefs with over 100 receiving yards, wide receivers?
Was it like 20 years, 22
Yeah,
years, something like
it's
that.
been a very long time.
Can I play devil's advocate real quick?
Yeah.
There was, I believe, what is his name? Big Country or something on Twitter.
Yeah, Big Country.
I think he quote tweeted somebody who pointed out that after one of McColl's touchdowns, the only person that went over to congratulate him was Patrick Mahomes, and like Country dismissed it and was like, that's not happening on our team. But like, whose name of that out of the group of four that played Call of Duty? McColl's not on there, and he's a gamer. He's got his setup and everything. Yeah,
it's not just that he has a setup. He is signed to, I think it's Pioneers GG, which is a Kansas City gaming company. That's why you saw him try and hop in Abby Berner's DMs on Twitter. He wasn't trying to hop in her DMs for that. He was trying to get a little promotion within.
But I mean that too.
Member. I mean, probably.
But do we find that odd? Do we find that funny? Do we think there's anything to that? What's going on with McColl?
Man, I think there's a combination of things. Like, I don't know what the chemistry is inside that locker room. I don't think a lot of people do. It's possible that McColl is just, when they're not on the field, when he's gaming, he's just wrapped up in like actually doing the work that's with the esports league that he signed with. The other portion could be just like maybe he's not clicking in that locker room. Maybe that's the reason why he started off so slow this season and why he hasn't been productive in the previous seasons. Not saying that he's not a good teammate. It just may not be a proper mashup of like personalities.
That's what I think more of it is.
And we talked about it in the off season. My neighbor saw him at the casino putting all his money on roulette and smoking cigarettes. Like, that's clearly not something that anybody else is on the team is doing, or at least our offensive weapons there that are together. They're not. They may be going and gambling, but they're not smoking ciggy pops in the bar. So just that, I think that's just a little bit difference between some of the personalities. I think you can also see that on the franchise at the beginning of the season when they interviewed McColl versus them interviewing other people. McColl is an active guy. He likes to go out and do things on his own. And so I think that could be just the difference in the locker room. I think they'll get that shaped up because it doesn't look good for the public view.
Yeah, I wanted to ruffle some feathers there. I don't really put much to it. I think, I mean, he did have 3 touchdowns on Sunday, so
yeah.
I believe they celebrated the other 2. So one.
Yeah, there's a stupid one.
Sean, I wanted to correct you earlier on the number 3 versus number 1. It's not a huge one, but for the simple fact that that's now 2 number 1 defenses ranked by the NFL that we have faced this season. The Bills was number 1, which we took their defense down.
Weren't the Bucks number 1 when we played them?
The Bucks. It was the Bucks. And after we played the Bucks, their defense dropped out of the top 10. And it's happened now twice. It didn't just happen with the Bucks. It's now happened with the second number 1 defense that we've gone up against. And that defense fell from number 1 all the way to 13. That's the 49ers.
Well, the Bills weren't number one when we played them.
I don't believe that they were top five, but we did not fit. They were not the number one defense at the time. That was still the
Mm.
49ers.
We
Yeah, I mean, we. Sorry, Sean. We
it's
know what we
just
can do, bro.
just goes back to like show how stupid that Colts game was, how out of place that was for us.
It's a
How
given. We're supposed to be given like those things happen. Like that happens with the
yeah,
Chiefs. It's so
but it's
dumb.
just we only play in weird games now. Something weird happens in every single game for us. That's just not on brand
Well,
for us anymore.
the past two games, the refs have been in their damn pockets all game. I didn't necessarily get to watch the whole game, but I could see everybody complaining about how much. I mean, the refs were throwing flags in the 49ers game.
Yeah,
I
there's
mean,
quite a
it's
few flags in that one. I mean,
they weren't even out of place either. They definitely threw a bunch of the right calls. The only one that I have an issue with, and most other people have an issue with. I almost did it. I almost did it. Uh, was the penalty for the low block outside the tackle box, quote
yeah,
unquote. They ended up drawing it up, and they did change the rules this year for outside of the tight end box. You can do it there. That's such a minuscule and tight call that you don't see gets called really anywhere else. Nobody liked that call. I didn't even see 49ers fans like that call.
that's how running backs block defensive ends there. They pulled it up on the broadcast, put the box out there and showed it to you. He was clearly out of it. Like get as close, but that of all calls,
And
So it
Bosa
technically
was
was legal, but it's like normally a no call. Is that what we're saying?
it is technically illegal, but generally is a no call. And the other thing is like Bosa was lined up another 3 feet outside of Jarek McKinnon's shoulder. So he was already way over. How else are we expecting people to be able to block this? Not just people, more specifically a skill position player. Um, this ridiculous. Like, let's get our stuff together.
As guys get faster, that wide nine becomes wide as fuck.
yeah. Moving on
uh,
to a great penalty that was not called though. Chris Jones getting another fumble.
It was beautiful. I was worried there for a minute. I was like, "Oh boy, Chris, don't you wrap up? Don't you touch him? Just get the ball."
Do you think getting the two interceptions and the fumble is going to stay for us? Because this is our first turnovers in a long time. Do you think defense is finally going to get it going now?
I mean, Willie Gay comes back, and we see what can happen. McDuffie still kind of waiting in the wings, so it could, and that's usually the strength of a Chiefs defense is um, though just taking those opportunities when they come. You know, we we're known. Well, I mean, when Marcus Peters was here, his first couple of years, we were known for an insane turnover differential. So I think that spirit usually on a Chiefs defense lives on. I think we're capable of it, but do I think it's going to stick around? Probably not.
All right. Do you think it's just going to be rookies getting interceptions in the end zone for the rest of the year?
I can cross my fingers for it. And am I? Are we gonna really rely on that kind of stuff when it comes playoff time? No, I don't think that's what's gonna help win us games when it really matters.
You look back at it, I think like what was it since 2019? We haven't really won the turnover battle for an entire season. For a while, it just I think 2019 was the last time we did, and that was even with one of the league's worst defenses. And that was just because Pat was not turning the ball over; it just wasn't happening. We're not that type of defense. We're a bend, don't break, allow a field goal, go down and score 30 touchdowns per game type of team. It just doesn't work like that. I thought it was awesome that we're maybe trying to go that way, or we at least did against this bad offense. But the whole defense showdown, man, like you got to give credit when credit is due. Spags has been fairly bad. I would outside of like the Bills game and this game has been fairly bad, I thought. And to be able to like mix and match and be able to get people in the right positions and to hold these guys to the low score that we did, get turnovers, but most impressively have the defensive line work that amazing offensive line the way that we did and get all the sacks and the safety and get the pressure on the quarterback. Hats off to Spags. Hats off to the defensive line. Uh, that was the best game that they've put together to date. And the Cardinals game was fantastic for the defensive line as well.
So is this the defensive line that you were picturing to be top 5 right now?
If this defensive line could continue that trend the way that they played this past week against the 49ers and pick up on things that they did well during the Cardinals game, this is the defensive line that I was expecting to have play. They've got the ability to do it. They just tend not to for some reason. I don't know what that issue is. I don't know. Frank Clark had a tremendous game. That was the first game he's had well in a year. He hasn't done anything else. That was a great game from him. Malik Herring, a guy that Tybo has been talking about since the offense, comes up with the fumble recovery. He's getting in there. One of the stats that I saw, I don't remember who it was. Derek Nottie has had like 90 plus. I think he's had 99 uh, snaps where the offense has dropped back. Do you know how many pressures that man has created? Goose egg.
I saw that tweet too.
Nothing. What is he doing out there? Let's get these other guys in. Put Colin Saunders in there. The man can play linebacker at least. He deserves a few reps. He's blocking holes. He's getting pressure. He's doing what he's supposed to. Yeah, like they're finally clicking. And I still think there's a few adjustments that need to be made.
I can agree with you that like I think Colin should be playing more than Derek Nottie, but that Derek Nottie's role is not necessarily pass rusher on our team.
He's a run stopper for sure.
And top 5, I think he's even a little much for their ceiling on if this like defensive line plays well. But I think that's kind of the area still that I'm hoping we go out and get somebody that's going to make more of an impact, because that another really good rusher will put us into a top 5 type of defensive line. I don't think we really have the guys for it right now. But my defensive player to watch from our last show, LJ, I did see that he made an impact on the game. He got a sack or a half a sack. So he's one of those guys that's he's the big name guy, veteran on our team that's going to make those types of plays. Hopefully that lead to turnovers, that lead to stops, that lead to things that are going to carry instead of those like really opportune turnovers where you were talking about a rookie getting a interception in the end zone.
Did I miss something? Is Turk Wharton injured? Did I just miss that?
We talked about he's out for the season.
Oh, that's right. Okay, no, he is. That's why. No, I knew I missed something. Yeah, that's why Stallworth is in. Okay,
yeah,
that makes more sense.
One thing that I did notice with the defense, though, was having Willie Gay back. There was a different energy on the field on the defensive side. That he brings the charisma, everything you need for that defense over there.
And it seemed like Darius Harris brought that for the first game where he replaced him, but it didn't carry over to the other games. But it's as simple as a different type of energy. I mean, he's just incredibly talented linebacker, but it does have a lot to do with the energy that he brings.
What is Sky Moore still doing on special teams?
I don't know.
Why is he still there?
The man's never been a part of a punt return in his life until he came to the Chiefs.
I thought he was at Western Kentucky. I thought he was there.
Nope.
No?
Western Michigan.
So that's interesting, and that tells me that he probably shouldn't be back there. Like, I love Andy's tendency to ride with his players. Like, if they make a mistake and he goes right back to them. But, I mean, how many punts does he have to drop for us to, I don't know, look elsewhere?
Why did we get rid of
switch him out?
They did. They put McCole back there.
Yeah.
But we dropped
McColl's dropped one this year already, too.
Right. But like we dropped Corey Coleman, right? That was a guy that we were expecting to stay on and be a punt returner in case he was needed. He was brought onto the special teams. He's now no longer, or excuse me, onto the practice squad. He's now no longer there. What is our backup plan? Do we have one?
Nope.
It's.
Great.
I
Leave the
mean,
rookie out there.
Can we trade for Tyreek?
I'd rather have McCole back there than Sky Moore at this point. But
Yeah.
As long as I mean, gosh, at least D Rob didn't drop any punts. I thought
Is
I'd
he
never say that.
is he losing it in the sky? Is it just too much sky out there for
That should be fine.
him?
bad puns.
Bad puns.
Mark it down.
I did like the
That's
idea
me.
of trying to trade for both Elijah Moore and DJ Moore. Just
The more
like nobody but Moores.
Oh man. What does this look like for the defense moving forward? I mean, do you much like I just sat here watching the game and thinking, okay, we watched MVS. We know what he did 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, however long it was, is not sustainable. We know that for MVS. And he went out and he did have he did have a fairly solid game uh, against the 49ers. But we know that week that he put up a while ago is not sustainable. Is that the same thing for this defense? Like we're just expecting every so often for them to go out there and do a little bit of showboating and getting the job done and then back to like mediocrity.
Yeah, I think whenever it's the teams that we need to get up for, they're going to come out and show out. But the lackadaisical teams that really just easy games, thinking the offense is going to go out there, then figure it out in the fourth quarter, stop them. Then that's going to come back.
Yeah, we're going to be carried off of our big names. LJ, Chris Jones, our linebackers. You know, you throw Juan Thornhill in there, he shows the right things at certain times, but when it comes to pure coverage, we're not that good, and we haven't been for a while. And you add on to the tendency for Spags to just keep everybody in man coverage on an island. That I mean, it's not the greatest formula for success. So he leans really heavily on the blitz packages. I commend him on the formation where he's got Chris Jones on one end, Karlaftis in the middle, and Frank Clark and Dunlap on the right side. They run a bunch of stunts with Clark and Dunlap. Karlaftis bull rushes up the middle, and Chris Jones does what Chris Jones does. So it's a neat formation in crucial times. But as far as our philosophy and coverage ability, I mean, we're not anywhere close to top tier defense, even when we're playing well.
I agree. I think there's another unit that needs a shout out besides the defensive line with how well they played. How about the Hogs, the offensive line? After multiple weeks of being poor and not showing up on games that we needed to show up at, come out with an absolute banger of a day.
Man, what did they let up? 2 pressures, maybe?
At best, I think Pat got sacked once.
Yeah, just once.
One sack, 2 pressures. They hit home 50% of the time. Wow.
On all his drive backs. It's amazing.
I know. I mean, I didn't see much of it. I saw more of our defense playing when I could catch the game. But stats wise, it looks like the offensive line had a great game.
We completely neutralized Nick Bosa.
Why couldn't Wiley do that last week? Well, I don't know what, but out of nowhere, Oregon's Max Crosby, but out of nowhere, he turns into him and Orlando Brown both just turned into the league's best tackles, right and left, out of nowhere, being able to keep Bosa. Bosa did get the 1 sack. I think he ended up with 2, maybe 3 pressures, but basically quiet and silent the entire day, and nobody else on the defensive line was doing anything either. That was a hell of a performance, not only in the pass blocking scheme, but in the run blocking scheme.
I think the coaches got to work something I brought up briefly in the last preview. The when you have a scheduled chip block and not getting beat to the inside, I think for the most part that was taken care of. It's shown. I mean, our running back showed out to help fix that problem, but I mean, I feel like the coaches kind of got on that offensive line because we know they're capable of Pro Bowl all pro level output. Like we have a good offensive line, or we should.
Speaking of running backs there, how about the Andy Reid mind games to say we're starting Isaiah Pacheco and he only gets 9 offensive snaps?
Starting running back for Kansas City Chiefs hasn't meant anything since Kareem Hunt. And honestly, before Kareem Hunt, it didn't mean anything until Jamal. We've had 2 starting running backs that actually meant something in the last 10 years. It's pretty pitiful for being what used to be running back central.
You could kind of argue Damian, but it's like when Damian Williams came out, we had production by the guys underneath him. Like,
yeah, it's odd. It's odd, but I mean, hey, I don't know. We'll see about Pacheco. I don't know how I feel about it yet. Name the starter in likeness only because Clyde ended up getting more snaps anyways.
I think the promise is still pretty high. I love his style. I think he might be a longer term solution to our running back. I don't. Are we going to hang on to Clyde? Are we going to pay him any money? Like, I mean,
I wouldn't expect to. A lot of people on Twitter are like pointing out certain gaps and whatnot, and like going back on his film and you missed here or whatever. He's number one. We know that he's slow coming out of the backfield. His best threat is being a receiving running back, which we don't use him at all. But he's slow to cut. We've seen that his vision is somewhat poor. If you look at some of these plays back that you call out, really he's being covered. And if he makes the cut that you want him to make, number one, he's too slow. Number two, even if he was fast enough, he'd be barely escaping the defender that's there watching him. I just don't think he fits our scheme well, or we're not fitting our scheme to be able to utilize him as the weapon that he is. And Pacheco would fit our system much better. So I don't see us keeping him past this season. I think we get through the Super Bowl, we get through up to the draft, and I think he may go for some draft picks as we try to gain some draft capital since the draft will be held here in Kansas City.
There's a good chance of that, yeah. Why not? If Pacheco's showing that much promise right now.
I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Or go ahead.
I don't necessarily think Pacheco fits our system better than Clyde, but I think he would turn out to be the better running back for sure.
Wanted to get your thoughts on this because it comes from a couple different sources. There was at Brad Stainbrook and there's Don Cliveman. Cliveman added in that Greedy Williams was from the Browns was up on the trade block. But Brad Stainbrook also said that running back Kareem Hunt will be eliciting offers and the Browns will be listening. Kansas City Chiefs Twitter cannot get Kareem Hunt out of their mind. Do you think it would be feasible or possible to bring in Kareem, whether before the trade deadline or postseason, and implement a new regime at running back with, say, Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, much like the Browns do with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, just making probably Kareem our number one with Pacheco to back him up?
No. I just see us going to draft the rest of the time with Mahomes for running backs. Just get these young guys, run them out for the first 4 years, send them on their way.
That's more than likely what will happen. There's no chance we reunite with Kareem Hunt.
I didn't think so. I'm not entertaining the idea. I've said all along it's not going to happen, but Chiefs Twitter thinks something completely different.
One last thing to talk about here. I know we mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Frank Clark is suspended for the next 2 games. What does this mean for the younger guys moving forward? And what type of playing do you think they're going to get? Like, do you think Karlaftis is going to show up a little bit more? Do you think Dunlap's going to show up a little bit more? I know he's not a young guy, but
One of the things that I noticed looking at the snap count from the weekend, Dunlap's already getting, on average, he's getting anywhere from 40 to 60% of the snaps already, which is pretty typical among the defensive line in the rotation. I think losing Frank, obviously Dunlap is going to be the guy to step up, but we don't have much depth after that. So that either means that the Kansas City Chiefs, before the deadline, most likely during the bye week, this full next week, um, they will be vying to trade for somebody to come in. It will not be for the first. Get it out of your minds, folks. It's not going to be for either one of them. It's not going to be Brian Burns. It could be a Montez Sweat, could be a Marcus Davenport, something like that, a guy that we can bring in. There's somebody out there to look for. The Broncos will be listening for offers for Bradley Chubb. He is on the last half season of his contract. He could be going something like they did with Von Miller, a third and a fourth, I believe it was. They don't have any leg to stand on when it comes to Bradley Chubb. So something like that could be a possibility. But if nothing happens, most likely our defensive line is going to look a lot worse because the same guys are going to be on the field and we have no rotation.
dream guy for me would be, probably not possible, but Cam Jordan from the Saints. Older guy. Saints aren't playing too well. He's under reasonably good contract for the next 2 years as well. Money wouldn't really would have worked this year, but
with what he's already been paid and getting $400,000 back from Frank Clark's contract, because we do not pay him for the 2 weeks that he's suspended, we're now up at $4 million. I think it's $4.4 million or $4.2 million in cap space. It definitely could be possible with a guy like Cam Jordan.
He would be a very interesting fit.
If we got the worst defensive lineman out of the list of guys that you guys just talked about, I think it would do a lot for this defensive line, even when we still have Frank Clark. Karlaftis is going to get run ragged. I mean, he's either going to show out or he's either going to show up to play or he's going to not really have a future here, because he's definitely looking like a project guy, and if he's going to continue to just kind of be we got to think like we're going to move on. Like we can't survive in a league of pass rushers if Karlaftis at this output is our number one guy. Like
he's already getting one of the things we continue to talk about. Loftus is already getting like 70% of the snaps. As every week goes by, he's creeping up a couple extra percent every single week. So man, expect him to be out there like 90% of the time these extra coming weeks while Frank Clark is out.
Against some not top tier offensive lines.
It'd be beautiful to see
if time
we can get it done.
Yeah.
Especially coming off the bye week as well.
Well, folks, we are in the bye week. All right. This is the final post-game show that we have for a little bit. We don't fret. We'll have our NFL shows. We've got some things planned for what would be a Chiefs pregame and a post-game show. So don't fret. Don't worry. We'll be here. We've got some things planned. So stick around. Make sure to check us out on Twitter and YouTube, Bob and Bo Show. Make sure you're hitting us up with the fines. Tybo needs your top 5 suggestions. We got to do those. And I keep hearing from people that Sean's just the tips in the NFL shows doing okay, not doing okay. Some of you have been burned by some of his picks. So I want you to let him know there as well. All right. Until next time, go Chiefs.
Go Chiefs.